Imagine waking up not to the shrill blare of an alarm clock or the soft glow of a smartphone screen, but to the unrelenting darkness of a world where survival is not optional, where each day begins with a command whispered not by ambition or desire, but by necessity: endure. For the medieval peasant, dawn was less a promise of opportunity and more a harsh decree. No neatly scheduled leisure, no safety nets, no chance of postponement. Long before the first pale light of the sun stretched across the horizon, bodies already aching from yesterday's labor stirred into the bitter chill of their dwellings. The air itself seemed to press upon their skin, as if the world itself sought to test their resilience. From the frost-bitten plains of northern Europe to the sun-scorched valleys of Africa, across the terraces of Asia, and deep within the highlands of the pre-Columbian Americas, peasants did not exist as faceless figures in history books. They were living, breathing embodiments of endurance, carrying generations of practical knowledge etched into their muscles and minds. Their hands shaped earth, stone, wood, and fiber into tools and shelters. Their wisdom, honed over centuries, was not written in texts but whispered in the dark, passed down through observation, trial, and survival. In the dim, cold interior of a peasant hut, the day begins not with gentle light but with shadows that cling to every corner. The hearth, often only a pit of banked embers, offers scant warmth. No chimney vents smoke safely away. It curls and thickens, a pungent companion to the waking family. In Europe, the smell of damp straw, sweat, and the animals sharing the space mingled in the chill. In Asia, the faint scent of steamed grains, wet mud floors, and plant fibers greeted the first motions of life. In Africa and the Andes, smoke from clay ovens and the faint aroma of dried grasses formed an invisible shield against the biting night. Peasants did not track time with clocks, watches, or calendars. Their bodies, tuned over generations, became instruments of precision. The creak of settling wood, the faint rustle of livestock, the distant call of a doggerel were natural indicators that the night was fading. Sleep itself was segmented as first sleep after dusk, a period of wakefulness during the deep night, followed by a second sleep until dawn. This nocturnal interlude was not idle. Fires were coaxed back to life from cold ashes, embers rekindled to stave off frostbite, and livestock quietly fed. In feudal Japan, farmers might step outside to read the sky for signs of frost or rain. In the Balkans, the absence of familiar sounds warned of prowling predators. In the Andean highlands, the temperature and scent of the mountain air dictated preparations for crops and animals. Even before the sun appeared, every household member had a role. Women tended embers, stirred grains or small batches of beer, and prepared meals for the coming day. Children fed animals, fetched water, and observed, learning survival with the acuity of young apprentices. Elderly members monitored the household, listening to subtle shifts in wind or the creak of walls, their eyes attuned to dangers invisible to the untrained. Each action, however minor it appeared, carried weight. A neglected ember or a missed step in preparing food could mean ill. Death dressing was never about fashion. Clothing existed to protect against the environment, labor, and disease. In Europe, coarse wool, stiff with lanolin and dirt, scratched and itched but kept frost at bay. Linen tunics, thin and worn, offered little warmth but were prized. Animal hides lined homes in colder regions, trapping heat. Across Asia, bast fibers like mulberry bark were boiled, pounded, and woven into rigid garments. In Africa, palm fibers or beaten bark formed rough, durable clothing. In the Andes, alpaca and llama wool provided warmth. Though the texture was coarse by modern standards, layers were essential. Even sleep occurred in work garments. Color was rare, achieved only through labor-intensive processes using plant matter, insects, or rusted iron, yielding muted browns, grays, and yellows. Each stitch, each patch, each roughened fiber represented labor, patience, and survival. Shelter was no luxury. Homes were built from the earth, stone, wood, and whatever local materials were available. In the Andes, adobe bricks formed thick-walled homes, protecting against frigid nights and intense sun. In West Africa, mud, millet stalks, and woven branches created dome-shaped roofs, resilient against storms. In Europe, wattle and daub frameworks, woven branches coated in clay and straw, formed walls that breathed and flexed with wind and moisture. Floors were packed earth, often layered with straw for warmth. Roofs were thatched, designed to shed rain and snow but needing constant repair. Windows were small or non-existent. Openings covered with oiled cloth or animal hide minimized heat. Lost livestock often shared indoor space. Body heat, a vital source of warmth. Every structure was alive, vulnerable, adaptive, and in need of continual care. Yet the dwelling was only part of the struggle. Beyond the door lay the fields, often worked not by free ownership but by obligation. In Europe, feudal lords demanded tithes, labor, and a share of harvests. In the Ottoman Empire, timar holders collected taxes and labor service. In China, landowners or the state exacted rent, often in rice or silver. In the Andes, tribute to the Inca state ensured the empire's survival. Regardless of region, the peasants' labor was a negotiation with authority. Crops were planted not for preference but for sustenance after obligations were met. Every day was dictated by survival calculations: food security, weather, soil fertility, and human endurance. Food itself was fraught with danger. Meals were not prepackaged or regulated by science. Stored grains could harbor mold or deadly fungi, like ergot, causing hallucinations, convulsions, and gangrene. Roots and tubers required careful processing. One misstep could kill. Fermentation processes for beer or pickled vegetables demanded precise timing. Wild foraging carried risks of misidentification. Peasants developed strategies: tasting small portions, feeding suspect food to animals first, using acids or pungent herbs for rudimentary disinfection. Knowledge was transmitted orally, a lifeline across generations, where failure could mean catastrophe. Health was equally precarious. Formal medicine was inaccessible. Remedies were homegrown and inherited. In India, neem leaves treated wounds. In Europe, herbs, mosses, and mud stopped bleeding or infections. Midwives were surgeons, pharmacists, and spiritual guides. Practices combined observation, tradition, and faith. Misapplied remedies could kill faster than illness. Survival required meticulous attention to detail, vigilance, and accumulated knowledge. Every household maintained tools and materials: knives, needles, cloth, medicinal plants, life-saving in the absence of professional care. Even after labor, feeding animals, tending fires, and preparing food, the day demanded psychological resilience. Night brought vulnerability, fear, and reflection. Superstitions, rituals, and charms were not mere belief, but frameworks for coping with unseen threats. Horseshoes, knives, paper talismans, or offerings safeguarded households. Stories, recited orally, educated children, transmitted cultural knowledge, and offered strategies for survival. The intangible systems of belief reinforced tangible survival strategies. Children contributed early and heavily. From tending goats in the Balkans to carrying water in China, they learned observation, skill, and focus. Play was rare. Survival was education. Women managed multiple simultaneous responsibilities: tending hearths, caring for infants, repairing homes, maintaining gardens, and preparing meals. Every role was essential. Failure of one member endangered all. The household functioned as an interconnected system, where invisible labor was just as critical as visible labor in the fields. Across continents, peasants endured climate extremes: frigid European winters, scorching African summers, monsoon rains in Asia, high-altitude cold in the Andes. They adapted through clothing, shelter, diet, and work schedules. Techniques varied, but the principle was universal: resilience and ingenuity shaped by necessity. Layering clothing, preserving food, storing water, maintaining fires, and cultivating medicinal knowledge were all survival mechanisms honed over generations. Even seemingly trivial tasks held vital importance. Grain had to be inspected daily, water buckets repaired, animals cared for, and hearths maintained. Each action protected against cascading failures. Failure meant hunger, illness, or death. These tasks, carried out silently and continuously, formed the backbone of medieval life. Recognition was rare. Only survival mattered. Despite relentless labor, uncertainty persisted. Illness, injury, crop failure, or harsh weather could undo months of effort. Yet peasants adapted subtly, mixing crops, hiding surplus, sharing labor with neighbors, and relying on mutual aid networks. Social cohesion, oral knowledge, and generational expertise functioned as the only safety net in the absence of formal systems. Every day demanded vigilance, flexibility, and courage. Nighttime brought temporary reprieve but also continued vigilance. Fires banked, animals settled, and stories shared. Children learned caution. Adults reflected on survival strategies, and the elderly imparted knowledge. Darkness was never idle. It was a space for preparation, reflection, and subtle control over forces largely beyond one's power. Through this relentless cycle, medieval peasants survived. They lacked wealth, power, or technological convenience, yet they possessed endurance, memory, and skill, honed through centuries of trial. Their lives were brutal, harsh, and often invisible in history books, yet they were the foundation of civilizations. Survival, every meal, every stitch, every fire maintained, was a testament to human resilience across regions, cultures, and climates. The message remains the same. Life for a medieval peasant was a constant negotiation with nature, society, and mortality. Comfort was a rare luxury, survival the daily mandate, and ingenuity the only constant ally. Today, the word medieval peasant may conjure dusty images of straw huts or primitive life, but in truth, it represents an extraordinary tapestry of human ingenuity, endurance, and quiet heroism against an unforgiving world. To understand their lives is to glimpse the raw, unvarnished essence of human survival. A reminder that civilization rests upon the sweat, skill, and stubborn persistence of those who labored when survival was everything and comfort nothing.